New Z power moves are coming to Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, so now's a pretty good time for a top 10 list about them. So let's go for top 10 Pokemon that need exclusive Z moves in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And man, this is going to be a complicated video because Kommo-o is a very complicated Pokemon with its exclusive Z move. It modifies the existing attack directly and then makes Kommo-o gain +1 to all of its stats. So really it feels like there's almost no limit to what a Z power move is capable of because Kommo-o is a pseudo legendary Pokemon. Already has one of the highest base stat totals of like a usable Pokemon. So let's just give +1 to everything right there. That's kind of scary, and you only get one per game, so it looks like the power overload is going to be massive. This also shares traits with something that we have seen before. Exclusive moves like Conversion and Geomancy, when used to be Z-powered, they also gain +1 to all the stats, but the new Z-power takes it to a new level by actually being able to potentially do damage or have other effects. And we've also seen with Lycanroc's new Z-move that really any effect is possible, that you can remove terrain while also getting a boost to an existing move. So this video, we'll warn you, might have some overlay. It's like, oh, let's just boost this Pokemon stats, let's just give it this really cool side effect. But in that, it's more about the Pokemon that need it as well. So let's start off number 10 on the list, Toxapex. Now, this is where it's pretty much looking at Baneful Bunker. That Toxapex is Baneful Bunker, that's an exclusive move, so it seems like a rightful candidate, but also it has a lot of good combo potential with Toxapex as well. That if the opponent is poisoned, which Baneful Bunker inflicts, if the move makes contact, then that means you are going to be able to crit every single time and do bonus damage. This could be an aspect behind it, you know, maybe Z Baneful Bunker inflicts Toxic Poison on that turn if the opponent makes contact, and then also, you know, maybe Toxapex gains +1 to its attack and special attack, therefore can do more damage on top of it, while also being just a very bulky attacker, but maybe it could also have some other side effects. My biggest issue, so remember guys, everything we're talking about right now, you're giving up an item. You're also giving up a potential move slot, and you only get to use one Z move per game. Because of all this, you know, it has to be incredibly powerful or else you're just going to use a different Z move instead. And Z power looks to just kind of overwhelm any of the existing Z crystals as well. So let's look at Toxapex, for example, that Black Sludge. Toxapex loves Black Sludge as an item, potentially the Citrus Berry or Confusion Berry, but overall you're going to get a high amount of effectiveness out of that item. Also, Toxapex can run the Stockpile, which boosts its defenses, so why would you waste a turn protecting if you're not going to get direct defenses out of it? And then also, it's a move slot syndrome. That, cool, if you're not using Baneful Bunker regularly, that means you're giving up another move slot for it just to get the Z power, and if the Z power doesn't give enough of an effect, then you're better off just having an item and a move that you're going to be using more often. So I feel for Z Baneful Bunker to work, it can still work with the theme of Toxapex, but it has to give +2 defense and +2 on the special defense. So pretty much, you go behind your Baneful Bunker, you're safe for that turn, and then you double your defenses, so you come out twice as tanky. I think that does work for the theme of Toxapex, and given what we have with Kommo-o and looking at the trade-offs, I think it's balanced, and remember, you only get one per battle, and you can still nuke out Toxapex, even with something like that. So that's something interesting to consider. Number 9 on the list, let's go and look at Toucannon. One of the biggest reasons why I think Toucannon needs to be on this list is just because it's not that used. Like, a lot of care went into the Pokemon's design and lore, and it seems like something that has a lot more potential with that Beak Blast, but at the end of the day, it's one of your starter birds. It doesn't have a lot of stats behind it, and this is also where I feel the video could just start sounding like a broken record. I'm going to try to spice things up, don't worry. Hold out till the end, because we got some fun things coming up on this list, but yeah, it's like, now I'm just imagining every potential candidate as +1 on all stats. Can Toucannon be saved with +1 on all of its stats? Maybe if it just gets +2 on its speed after using Beak Blast, that could be something cool. I was also wondering, like, what if you kind of mix it in with Counter? That whenever the opponent hits you while using Z Beak Blast, they're going to receive like 1.5 recoil damage, so kind of like Metal Burst. So even if they hit you with a physical or special move, it's going to rebound some damage back. And then Beak Blast is also going to be able to get a Z modified damage amount. So that way you just go and nuke out the opponent and pretty much just like guaranteed KO if they decide to attack you while using the Toucannon Z Beak Blast. I think that mechanic can kind of work similar to how we see some of the new GX cards. That GX, it's a very similar mechanic to Z moves, but you don't have just like directly more damage. Sometimes it's interesting effects, sometimes it's extra things. Like when we look at Drampa, just draw power. Draw 10 cards. That's scary, but you can only, it counts as your move for the turn, and you can only use it once per game. So some of these other interesting effects that we've seen out of the GX moves, they can be very powerful, but it's kind of like your one gambit. So it seems like Z moves, they're kind of built to be like an instant nuke, you know, maybe remove an opponent's threat efficiently, or break through evasion, or any kind of defensive boosting. But with this, I think that you can actually kind of stack some effects onto the Toucannon, and then make it work, and then maybe give it +2 speed out of it. However, what we saw with Lycanroc is that Lycanroc, it doesn't gain any stats after clearing terrain, so you might get one secondary effect, that's it. And if it's going to be as effective as others, who knows? So there we go. Number 8 on the list, Elemental Monkeys. I think I want to see these guys get a Z move or not get a Z move, because it will tell us everything that we need to know about potential Z power candidates. And when we look at it, you know, these are some of the most forgotten, looked down upon Pokemon ever. That we have it right here. Cerbino, the top 519 through 720 Pokemon in the Pokemon elections in Japan. So for the 20th Pokemon anniversary, they had the Pokemon elections, and that was just kind of show, like, they did all the Pokemon that existed. So no 7th generation, and they had them ranked. In the bottom of the list, you had all of the Elemental Monkeys, and then even Simisear being the lowest ranked Pokemon out of every single Pokemon. So because of that, Elemental Monkeys, not favored. And this is Game Freak's chance to kind of show us a lot of things. Can Z moves work for Pokemon that aren't just 7th gen? Because that's like another big question right here. Are these new Z power moves, are they going to be for 7th generation only Pokemon? So far we've seen it for Lycanroc, so far we've seen it for Kommo-o. And also, will that break from the 1st generation only as well? Because we've also seen the Z moves for like Munium Z, Pikachunium Z, Pikachunium Z, the Snorlax, and Eevee. So it's like, how much diversity are we going to get through the generations? And also, is Game Freak going to try to save these Pokemon? Is it going to be that these Z power moves can be put on Pokemon that are worthless, but are trying to be made not worthless, or is Game Freak just going to condemn them forever? It feels like with Mega Evolution, it feels like with Z moves, that Game Freak can kind of play favorites and be like, hey, we can at least give something to this Pokemon that would otherwise be forgotten forever. And same with the Alolan Pokemon as well, I feel. So that could kind of be a thing, and I think it might be, I don't know what move it could use, because I think they'd have to kind of share the same move, or maybe have something that worked with it to be able to get the Z power. I don't know if there's any amount of stats that could help save these Pokemon, but it would be interesting to see something that isn't just 7th gen, that isn't just an exclusive move, that isn't just going to be gaining +1 to all of its stats. Next up, we have Heatmor. So Heatmor, another forgotten 5th gen Pokemon, but this one is very peculiar because we have the new move, Fire Lash. And Fire Lash is a very unique move and a very interesting move. Like, I just think, why, Game Freak? Why did you give Heatmor Fire Lash unless it has a purpose? Because it's only 7th generation. They didn't buff its stats, they didn't do anything else, they just gave it an exclusive move for the new generation, and it's actually a pretty solid move. That when you break it down, you know, it just lowers the target's defense 100% of the time. So that means you're going to be able to stack bonus damage on top of it if you stay alive long enough. But I feel like this might have just been like preemptive, you know, like just building up into the new exclusive Z moves for Pokemon Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. Test it out, see if Heatmor gets any extra bump in play, and then having Z Fire Lash be some kind of crazy effect for higher damage. As for the effect, I have no idea. One big problem about these Z moves is that if they have an effect that isn't just immediately killing the Pokemon, it doesn't seem like it makes sense. Like, okay, you go for Z Fire Lash, it lowers the target's defense, and say 100% chance to burn because of that. Do you really want to use your Z move to do damage, like a damaging Will-O-Wisp? Is your one and only Z move when you could have the Kommo-o Z move, or you could also just have like any EVM Z, you could have all these other crazy Z moves. Are also using one of the pretty powerful status Z moves. There's a lot of options out there, and are you going to trade your one and only Z move for a damaging Will-O-Wisp on the Heatmor, unless it gains +1 to all of its stats, in which case Heatmor doesn't even have heavy amounts of sustain, so those stats might not even get as far as some other Pokemon, because at least Kommo-o with +1 everything outspeeds and nukes everything. So we're just going to have to see how this one plays out, and also what it means for like the future of Z moves and stuff like that. Number 6 on the list is going to be Komala. Now, Komala, I feel, has a lot of potential to be just really good, mostly because of its ability. It's always asleep, so it can't get status. That's kind of cool right there, but that does also have trade backs that it can't rest, so you're locking yourself as sustain right there. And then the stats. The stats on Komala are just so low that really it does need +2 defenses. Yay, I'm sounding like a broken record again, but I mean, I feel that it's like every Pokemon introduced in the 7th generation that didn't make it competitively is missing like +1 or half to every stat or something, you know, like they're intentionally underwhelming. I'm wondering if that's because Game Freak is planning on just breaking them with a Z move and then saying, alright, this Pokemon is either somewhat usable or it's the most absurd broken thing ever if you decide to use your one and only Z move on it. But remember, everyone else is going to be using their most broken absurd thing ever with their one and only Z move for that battle as well. So good luck. It just seems like it's going to be massive Cannon City. But also when we look at Pokemon like Komodo being introduced, we look at all these other ridiculous Z moves and the power behind the damage amounts and stuff. We do need a lot of Pokemon that are also boosting their defenses or finding some kind of other stat that can help balance that out, because you know, if the defensive Pokemon aren't going to get any Z moves, then what's the point? That means everything is just going to be sweeper dominated. So that's something. As for potential moves that could be modified by it, I think that could give us a little bit of insight. I feel Yawn could do some really interesting things that wouldn't necessarily make Kamala busted, but I kind of think would work in line with the Pokemon's theme and then just kind of take it to the next step. So I feel it's just heal plus sleep. They are heal plus instant sleep on the opponent. So instead of Yawn taking that extra turn, Yawn has a 100% chance to sleep the opponent while also healing Kamala. That means since Kamala's slow, it gets a chance to refresh. It can stabilize, it can do whatever it needs to. So with this, you can bulk up once or twice, take some hits, and then anticipate when you need to put your opponent to sleep, when you need to get that full heal, and then effectively resets with a weakish Pokemon. Like, unfortunately, Kamala is weakish. Has a good attack stat, but the hit points and defenses aren't a heavy tank Pokemon. No matter how much you try to force this Pokemon into heavy tankiness, it's really just sadly not going to work out. So pretty much you refresh. It's like bringing in a not very strong Pokemon against a strong Pokemon, but that strong Pokemon's asleep. I think that works for the Kamala. Now everything's all drowsy and sleepy on the field, and then Kamala gets a chance to just like get one big hit in, force the opponent to switch, and then Kamala just can maintain advantage. I feel that Z move should be a major swing and advantage, and unless it does something ridiculous, it's not going to be worth it. Number 5 on the list, let's just say Mega Pokemon candidates. This is kind of cheaty, but it also kind of spices up the list quite a bit, because there's a lot of Pokemon that people are like, oh, that should get a Mega, oh, that needs to be a Mega, why isn't that a Mega? And one of the big ones is Mega Flygon. Even hinted in an interview that that Game Freak wanted to make Mega Flygon for Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, but they didn't think that they could do it justice, and that they couldn't really make something that would really work for the fans. So because of that, they ended up scrapping it, and then there were still a lot of Megas introduced as well. So Pokemon like Mega Milotic, any other Pokemon that you've said, man, that Pokemon needs a Mega, let's just put that on the list as well, because again, the list could go on forever, and we do have to know what about the Pokemon that are forgotten, what about the Pokemon that aren't 7th gen only or only 1st gen or something like that. Are we going to be able to fall outside of those? And if the answer is yes, then that means, hey, this is the 7th generation Mega. This is Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire for the 7th generation, where we saw all of these new Megas being introduced in the Hoenn remakes. Well, now it's just that opportunity, but Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. So I think it's viable, that could happen, and there we go. Number 4 on the list, Dunsparce. Bias? Yes. Opinion piece? Yes. Is it founded in anything? Maybe. So Dunsparce, one of my favorite Pokemon. I've been wanting to see this Pokemon get love, like Mega Dunsparce, Dunsparce Evolution. Give Dunsparce a Z move that actually just absolutely wrecks it. This is where I'm going to say Dunsparce needs to have a move, +1 to all of its stats, let it do something, and then maybe it might come out on top. Because Dunsparce has a pretty good hit point stat. If its other stats could back that up, then it might be able to take off and do something. One thing that's very dangerous about the Dunsparce is Serene Grace. Rock Slide. So in doubles, you can hit both opponents and then have a 60% chance to flinch each of them. That's terrifying. So you do have to like kind of overcome its speed, and it does have a low speed, so +1 speed isn't going to break it, but it is going to give it some extra combo opportunities. And again, all the Pokemon we're talking about are losing their item. They're losing 30% damage on all their moves. They're losing 50% speed that they could have potentially in items. But what about the move? Now another peculiar thing, much like with the Heatmore, we just randomly got Dragon Rush on Dunsparce in the 7th generation. Doesn't do anything for it, doesn't make it more viable, it just kind of exists there. And I'm wondering, it's like, is that a precursor to a Dragon Evolution? That would be pretty cool. What happens if it gets something? And then maybe Z moves can change typing and abilities. So I'm not going to really explore that too much in the video. I'm not going to be like, and then this Pokemon Z moves into something that gets sheer force. So effectively, the Z move becomes a Mega Evolution. But what if it does change typing? You know, Dunsparce becomes a Dragon after using Dragon Rush and then gains some stats, you know, gets +1 or has like base stat modification. So it's effectively like a Mega Evolution. That could be cool. I would like to, I just want to see a faster Dunsparce so I can flinch everything forever with the Rock Slide and pull off some shenanigans with an otherwise forgotten Pokemon. Also, Dragon Rush getting bonus damage, you know, just chipping your opponent for half health immediately with the Dunsparce, that's kind of neat. And then having stats to back it up afterwards, that's kind of neat too. So I really want to see Dunsparce or any Pokemon on that level of Dunsparce get some kind of wild buff that can show the true limits of Z moves. Number 3 on the list, we have Silvally. Now, a big thing about Silvally is that it's getting an absurd amount of promotion lately, that it felt like the storyline for Type Null and Silvally was really built up, that there was a lot of potential for it, and then it didn't go anywhere with Pokemon Sun and Moon. Well, now that we look at it, there's tons of TCG promotion. There's also a lot of new merchandise that's kind of featuring Silvally next to legendary Pokemon. So because of that, it's like, yeah, Silvally might actually play a much more crucial role. Depends on if Gladion really steps up in Pokemon Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon as well. If this happens, that means Silvally's going to be getting a lot. Now, the question is that enough for Silvally to be able to have nothing else, you know? If it gets all the storyline stuff, if it gets all these changes, then is that enough for Silvally, therefore it doesn't need a Z Crystal? Or maybe it does need a Z move, Z Power, Z Crystal, something like that, because Silvally, even though it has weird stats, you know, 95s across the board, it still isn't used. It's like, it's just a lesser Arceus, but it's not a good enough lesser Arceus to even be used competitively, and that's where the memories come into play. So, this is going to be the biggest hurdle. The weird thing is that if you give Arceus a Z Crystal, it actually becomes the typing of that Z Crystal. The Z Crystal can replace multi-type. So at the very least, that is the change that we need for Silvally, but maybe if it uses any move as well, like that would more be an ability thing, like if they really overhaul RKS system, then actually like an exclusive Z Crystal for Silvally, or maybe instead of actually like having the memories become an equip item, you use it. You use the memory on Silvally, it doesn't count as the held item, so that way you have a Pokemon that could be many different types, and then you can kind of change your moveset around that, while still having access to the other moves, therefore to kind of offset this weakness that it has. So if you could actually just use the memory, make it that typing, and then maybe there's just a generic Silvalium Z that actually modifies whatever move you use to be that typing, and then the crystal represents that, and then Silvally gets some kind of buff. There's a lot of weird things that kind of don't make a lot of sense that get really technical for the Silvally, but at the same time, I want to see this Pokemon get play, so I don't think any mechanic is too ridiculous for Silvally to end up working out in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Number 2 on the list, the most disappointing Pokemon in the 7th generation, Shiinotic. The reason why Shiinotic is the most disappointing Pokemon in the 7th generation is because it has 2 of the most powerful moves. When you give a Pokemon 2 of the most powerful moves in the game, you expect greatness. Strength Sap and Spore. Spore is the freest sleep brokenness that can exist in Pokemon, and that does exist in Pokemon, and sleep has been so broken that's just been nerfed constantly throughout the history of Pokemon, and then we see Pokemon like Amoonguss and Breloom just take over in certain situations just because it has Spore. That's it. So you'd expect kind of the same out of Shiinotic, and maybe Game Freak played it really safe with Shiinotic because they had fears as well, and then Strength Sap. You get more than half of your health in healing while also making your opponent hit less against you. For a tank Pokemon, that is about the dreamiest dream that could ever dream a dream, and it still does nothing on Shiinotic. So what we expected was just an Amoonguss. We expected a second Amoonguss, maybe in a better Amoonguss, but once we got the stats and typing, it was nowhere near close. The typing, way too fragile, way too frail, and then the stats, they're okay, but they're not enough. That hit point stat is too low. And I think that's kind of like one of the anthems of the 7th generation. Hit point stat is too low. The stats just aren't there. It seems like it's a tank, has the moveset of a tank, it looks like it wants to be a tank, but the stats say it isn't a tank. So how do we fix that? And I'm guessing, you know, if Shiinotic got some, like Z Strength Sap, what could happen there? Maybe the opponent goes to sleep. And I kind of already said that was Z Yawn, but I think that we need a great equalizer built into a Pokemon like that. So whatever the opponent's doing, if Shiinotic finds a way to survive, Strength Sap, full health, puts the opponent to sleep, now it has a better opportunity to do something. Maybe also gains a couple stats along the way. Like Strength Sap, maybe when it uses a Z Strength Sap, -1 attack and special attack to the opponent, +1 defense, special defense for Shiinotic. Sounds good, maybe not enough. Maybe you need like +2, -2. Make it like a memento that doesn't wreck you, but it is a Z move, so there is a lot of power behind that. Again, I'd either just say it gets +1 to every stat because it uses its exclusive move as a Z move, or we have to come up with something creative that would just be wild and then it's worth its own video. Something like that. So, generic thing for the game, but I think Shiinotic definitely needs it. And number 1 for the video on this list is going to be Golisopod. Because you have so much freedom, so much fun, so much amazingness that can happen with Z First Impression, and this was one of the most hyped Pokemon of the 7th generation, that when it was announced, like, this thing has to be good. When it was first released, when Pokemon Sun and Moon came out, people were spamming this Pokemon competitively because they wanted to make it work, and even now, it still gets a moderate amount of play. It's very weird for the 7th generation, that the Pokemon is either absurdly used, one of the most used Pokemon, one of the most strongest Pokemon out there, or it doesn't get any play at all. And Gillespie's like one of the few Pokemon, if not the only Pokemon, that's kind of smack dab in the middle. It's balanced, but if you want to make Z Crystals broken, you can just bring it in and do all kinds of silly stuff. Unfortunately, Gillespie isn't fast, so it isn't like a crazy sweeper that really fits in. But I'm wondering, like, okay, we can take what we know from the Lycanroc move. You know, we don't have to boost any stats. We can get all kinds of weird effects. So I'm thinking is that Z First Impression comes in, and it does Fake Out. You know, it flinches the opponent, but also traps them. I think this would actually be really cool, because then it means that Gillespie gets you in on its terms, and if things go bad, it has the freedom of piecing out, but you don't. So at the very least, it has to have Mean Look. It has to have Trap inside of it, because that means you're like, Gillespie comes in, it's like, alright, if you can't handle me, I'm going to have a fun time just ruining your day. Or maybe even saving Gillespie as your last Pokemon, using that, they're locked in, now you're free to Swords Dance, even if you fall below half health, you're good to go. That's another thing, that because of Emergency Exit, Gillespie, it really likes running Confusion Berry, it really likes running Citrus Berry, so now you're forced out sooner, which means you really need a big effect. And that's also why I feel that a Fake Out effect or flinch effect is absolutely needed on Z First Impression, because okay, Z First Impression does a lot of damage. If it doesn't KO the opponent, well, now they just get free revenge damage on you. Dang, that's pretty dang right there, isn't it? You know, maybe it also has like Pursuit. If it doesn't have that, maybe it has Pursuit, because Gillespie comes in on a lot of Dark-type Pokemon, a lot of things that hit super effective, and wants the First Impression, so that means, like, if you use Z First Impression while they're trying to switch out, just, like, insta-kill, you know, something like that. That'd be a pretty ridiculous effect, but I want to see more Oko effects as well. I wonder if that could actually be a possibility. But yeah, so what I'm saying is that you use the move, Z First Impression doesn't KO, well then they hit you, and now you're slow, so they hit you again, Emergency Exit pops, which means this really cool idea behind the potential of a Mean Look effect or trapping effect would just fizzle, because you switch out now. And I guess that means, like, maybe you get to trade that because you knock it out and then you get a nah, it just doesn't work. So there we go, guys. Hope you all enjoy the video. If you think a Pokemon needs a Z move, Mega Evolution, any fun stuff in 7th generation, leave your comment down below. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that generic YouTube stuff. Hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.